It's an evacuation. And so then we can begin to transcend our ego or move beyond our own psychic prisons that society puts us in. So that's what I tell all of first thing to do is wake up, be present, because you're asleep. If you're driven by your past or driven by your future, you're asleep. You're in a trance because it doesn't exist.
This is a podcast called Walk, Talk, Listen. An attempt to connect people and make this world a bit better by sharing opinions and experiences based on the belief that everyone's perspective is true, albeit partial. My name is Maurice Blom, and I would like to welcome you to yet another episode of Walk, Talk, Listen.
Okay, good day, everybody. This is another episode of the podcast Walk, Talk, Listen. And as always, I'm delighted with today's guest, who will introduce himself. Jody, please go ahead.
Well, Maurice, thank you for having me today. It's an honor to be on. It's an honor that I get the opportunity to share our work and our philosophy and what's behind it. I'm talking to you from Austin, Texas. I'm a professor at Texas A&amp University, Central Texas, which is just north of Austin, and I'm a management leadership professor there.
Okay, and I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. But before we go there, Jody, so you're in Texas now. Were you born there as well and raised?
Well, my family goes back 5 generations, so
Okay.
if you
Yeah.
can't tell, I got a lot of Texas in me. And so I was born outside of Dallas in a
Mm-hmm.
town called Garland, Texas. I'm the son of a car salesman. My dad managed about every major used car dealership in Dallas, and so I grew up on car lots and racing cars, and and had a great childhood. My mom and dad, I'm the only child, and so that's kind of my background. So the old Texas ethos, it's getting a little diluted now, but we enculturate them as much as we can. So
And when you say, I had a great childhood, what was that like then? Can you give some examples?
well, I don't know how many, probably few of your listeners know about Ozzie and Harriet. It was an old family TV show, so the All American. I mean, it was one high school town. I played Little League Baseball. I was an all-star Little League pitcher, played basketball, did the sports thing. It may not be a big deal in New Jersey, but my high school won back-to-back state championships in the biggest division. And if you understand that, that created an incredible culture. And my dad was my grandfather, or my great grandfather homesteaded some of the last open trails in Texas, was actually a true cowboy. My dad was born in a West Texas town. My mother's parents immigrated from Italy in the late 1800s. And so, and so they met in Dallas, so it was, grew up in a neighborhood full of kids, and we played, and, not much crime, no drugs. I mean, it was just truly, truly a wonderful
And
experience.
and who were the people who most influenced you while growing up?
My father. My
Mm.
father really, really more than anybody. My basketball coach, Joe Brown, and then church, was in the Methodist Youth Fellowship, and that did a lot of sports, which got my attention, and a lot of friends. A couple of teachers that prepared me for college, and so a number of people, but primarily, my dad and my mom. I mean, we were really close knit, and it may sound like an oxymoron, but he was truly an ethical car salesman. And he and mom gave me a really great exposure to, what ethics are and what honesty are, and, you're a man of your word, and, those kind of things. So hopefully I'm living up to them today.
And when you look back, do you see clues in your younger self that pointed towards the work that you eventually pursued?
No, not really. Now, early on, I won an essay in the sixth grade on why I want to be an aeronautical engineer. So school always came easy for me,
Uh-huh.
and I did get a degree in industrial engineering from Southern Methodist University. So I did start out as an engineer, and got my first job in Washington D.C. at a Army Research and Development Lab.
Hmm.
And from that, I got my MBA up there at American University, and I never thought about being a professor. And my advisor there, I took a course in organizational behavior, and he was from Ohio State. And I had finished. I was thinking about going back to Texas because I didn't agree with Washington. It didn't agree with me. I didn't want to stay, and I didn't want to stay in the government. And that's a whole nother story. And so he said, well, our national recruiters coming through from Ohio State. You ever thought about teaching? And I taught some government courses. And I said, well, not really. I said, watching you looks like it's a pretty good job. And so I met with them, and then I flew out to Columbus and met the doctoral students and everything. They offered me a 4-year teaching fellowship, so I got a ride at Ohio State, and graduated in 4 years. Got a doctorate in organization behavior and in theory, and from there I had job offers from both the University of Texas and Texas A&M, and I went to Texas A&M, and I was there several years, uh, and then moved to the University of Washington.
So, Jody, and then at what point did spirituality then enter your journey? Because you just explained in terms of you're moving towards these leadership studies, but you're combining, right, a couple of things that you're working on now. So when did
Well, I've really had two
spirituality enter?
careers. I mean,
Mm.
at that, in my first career, which lasted till 88, 89 at Washington, I was into technology. How do you manage technology organizations? How do you manage the creative act in high
Uh-huh.
technology organizations? And so I was really, worked with organizations there. And I married a Texas woman, and I was really tired of the big university publisher parish. You know, I did very well at it. I got tenure and did publish, but I really wasn't. Well, we didn't really care about Seattle. I mean, it was like living in a drizzly refrigerator. And, if you're from Texas, you got to have some 100-degree heat. And so my wife was from Texas. She wanted to go back. I thought, well, I'll give a good friend that I joined in business, and I was a custom home builder for 8 years on the coast. And did that, but I decided, really that was a lot of work, and maybe I might want to teach again.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, I was really, uh, it's hard to get back in it once you get out of it. And there's a whole story about how that happened. But I ended up at a university north of Austin in Killeen, Texas, where I am still, my 29th year. And which eventually was private school, eventually became Texas A&M, Central Texas, part of the Texas A&M system. And it was then, and I was going through some serious personal struggles, and I don't know how much you want to hear about how I got into all this. I guess you can decide how much you want to put in it. But basically, this was in 1999. I was teaching out of a new tech leadership book, and it talked about new millennium. And it talked about needing to lead from love and not fear.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, it also talked about the importance of vision and creating hope and faith in the vision, or faith in the vision. And so I'm looking at hope, faith, and love and leadership, you know. And so I started just kind of rummaging around, looking at that and researching it, and and out of all that, uh, came what became the spiritual leadership model.
Mhm.
And, basically, my elevator pitch on that, because I'm in the plane, somebody says, "What do you do?" And I say, "Teach
Yeah.
spiritual leadership." And their eyes kind of cross, "Well, what's that?" And I say, well, the spiritual part of spiritual leadership is very focused. It's about how can we at work satisfy our and our people's needs for a sense of purpose and in that our life has meaning and makes a difference.
Mm.
Primarily, purpose is grounded in serving others. And in doing so, the other aspect of it is called membership or belonging in a community, a caring, loving community that's
Mhm.
supportive of the purpose. So the spiritual aspect of spiritual leadership is purpose and belonging. The question then becomes, what kind of leadership will satisfy these needs at work? And that's where the hope, faith, love,
Mhm.
and vision come in. We call it altruistic love, which is about care and concern and appreciation for ourselves and our people. You can't lead others if you can't lead yourself. And so, and the source of that is some sort of going inward to create
Mhm.
self-awareness of our own ego and how it affects us, as well as uh, really, it's a spiritual journey of looking inward into ourselves and also recognizing that true happiness comes from loving and serving others, or caring and serving for
Mm.
others, because that's where you make a difference. Um, Happiness is not found in us satisfying our own desires.
And I want to ask more and know more about what you're now touching upon. But before the go there, I take small steps back. So when you made the change, you were alluding to the book, you know, a book that you were reading, right? And which was kind of
Well, it was a
instrumental in the
leadership
change.
text. I was
Or
teaching
text, a
leadership. Yeah,
text, yeah.
textbook.
So if you think back about that change in direction of your life, was that because of a particular experience, a person, or something else that turned it? Or was it something going gradually?
Well, I blew my life up. I
Mm,
mean, I got divorced. I was drinking heavily.
mm,
Truly a sense of failure. And in many ways, that coming to me uh, saved my life. And it just emerged. And I've got the notes from the original. It took about 9 months, a year to really put together those components. How do you go from hope, faith, and love to satisfying these spiritual needs, and then showing, or at that time, proposing that these satisfy some incredible organizational and personal needs or outcomes? And it really came to me. I had a car wreck that I had a near death experience in, and then I had a paralyzed arm for a year.
Mm.
And where it really came together with those two aspects was I was in the shower, and I've had this arm in a cast that would be paralyzed when they took it off, and I was hanging it out, hanging it out between the shower curtain, and it came to me. It just came. Wow, this is it. And uh, and the big challenge also was, how can you bring this into organizations and it not be considered religion? And that's I mean, there's
Mm.
so many side stories, to all this. And where that came was, really, if you investigate, what is spirituality, it's about going inward to find a source of strength greater in yourself, so you can truly move beyond yourself or become more self-aware, and then truly go love and serve others. And if you take a look at it, that is the foundation of spirituality that underlies religious traditions. So spirituality is necessary for religion, but religion is not necessary for spirituality. And so that then became the bridge of what allowed me to take this concept into organizations. And it's been a 26-year, 27-year struggle, because when you first speak to people, many go to proselytization, And, we wrote a book in 2013 that by then our methods and tools had come together. I'd done work with organizations. There'd been a lot of research on this that validated it. So we published a book, Maximizing the Triple Bottom Line uh, through Spiritual Leadership. And I'd already started working, had written some on sustainability even back then, of maximizing the triple bottom line, or going beyond profits to consider social systems and people as well as take care of the environment. And so that book put it all together. And so that was the first 10, 12 years of our work on, spiritual leadership. It just slowly got traction. And the key to it is, what I realized is that this type of the work I'm doing is about attraction, not promotion. And that when people hit this bottom or conversion, or where they realize that, especially in today's society, that he or she who dies with the most stuff wins, or the most followers, that ultimately, or the most money, that leads to a big hole in your soul or in your heart. And so at that point, and that's not often young in life, it can be, and my average student's 35 years old, because I'm across the street from Fort Hood. And I was there doing Iraq and Afghanistan, and incredible people. And and I had them come back in parts and body bags, and incredible levels of PTSD. So that was my crucible, is all of this. And most of these people, many of these people, were at that point. What is life about? What will make me happy? And so that's what I came to, is this is not about promotion or trying to talk somebody into it. It's about finding people who are at that point and are predisposed, maybe asking those questions. And maybe maybe there's a conversation, of course. And my university supported me in this. I don't know, it's real interesting. I ended up in been at top state universities, but they would have never let me teach this. So I ended up in a real small news course. We still only have 20, we're upper level, still only have 2,500 students, junior, seniors, and graduates. And so this was the crucible that, really led to all this. I don't know if that's made any sense or not.
No, it did. I would like to um, try to look at a couple of concepts around the spiritual leadership, right? And you mentioned a couple. You mentioned about vision, hope, faith, altruistic love. And I would like to start with the concept of hope. And why? Because that often comes up frequently in conversations that I have, the organization that I work for, Joint Learning Initiative on Faith and Local Communities. And we also look at the inner development goals, and hope is one of the skills as well. The question that I have around that concept of hope is hope something we feel, or is it something we practice?
Well, we don't focus on hope. It's hope/faith.
Uh-huh.
So it's the combination of two. Hope is a positive expectation. And in hope, Dante, the sign, through this gate, all hope, there's no hope, or hope is lost. So hope is a positive expectation. And the faith adds certainty to the hope. It's the belief that things that hope for will absolutely come to pass. And it's hope and faith in the vision. Hope and faith in the vision of the organization. And visions are aspirational, about what we want to become and what we want to be. And the vision is what drives purpose, because it sets the vision, mission, purpose, cultural values all come together to drive or satisfy these needs. But ultimately, spiritual leadership starts first with this inner life exploration that truly moves you to other-centered values, or the values of altruistic love, there's about 10 of them, and this is what we focus on: the cultural values or the personal values. Integrity, honesty, compassion, forgiveness, acceptance, gratitude. There's two or three more, and perseverance. And the hope faith generates energy and motivation and perseverance. If you say one word, what is the result of hope and faith is perseverance toward this goal, towards the finish line, towards this vision, which is really aspirational, but ultimately provides the context for our goals and strategies and actions in the organization.
Yeah, thanks, Jody. And another important concept, at least how I understand it, is, and I think you mentioned it already earlier in the conversation, is calling and membership. Can you maybe explain what that exactly means?
Well, originally it was calling and membership, and where I found these was out of a book written by a Yale psychiatrist in the early '90s called uh, the I can't remember now, but anyway, in it had 10 dimensions out of religion, and two of those was he called calling and membership. Now I focus more on purpose and belonging community. But calling is out of the professional or professionalism literature, doctors, lawyers, and the key element of a calling is service above self. And then membership, of course, creates that glue, that sense of commonality or integration, esprit de corps, teamwork, grounded in these altruistic values. So vision drives or positively influences calling/purpose, and altruistic love positively influences this sense of membership or community or belonging in support of the purpose. So the two come together synergistically. I mean, people can pursue a calling by themselves. They can be in the federal government that's serving the disadvantaged, and the organization does nothing to support them, but their calling does. And so, but when you create both of that, when you have an organization that has that sense of belonging, culture, and caring, and this is where the work on sustainability has come in, and one reason that and Ella and I both got involved in what I've been doing the last 10, 15 years on sustainability and also leadership formation, which is spiritual development. So that's all other, but I don't know.
No,
Am I answering your questions? Am I?
no, you are. I mean, now you're going in terms talking about sustainability. You're going for me one question too fast because I would want to ask
Well,
you about purpose and belonging.
yeah.
Do you think people today are struggling more with purpose and belonging than previous generations?
Yes and no. I think it's been a lifelong, history of the human race is certainly the last 2,500, 3,000 years where, religion emerged and the professions emerged, especially since the Industrial Revolution. The point being is, I think today the internet and then social media and now AI and the fact that we can see everything instantly anywhere from the world, due to this has connected us so intimately, and yet it's driven a, gives us the false image of what will make us happy. It grounds us in self fulfillment. And so in that sense, I do believe that it's more serious now. And I think Gen Z is recognizing that. And you're starting to some of the movements that you're seeing is Gen Z. And part of it also is, I'll get into a little bit of economics. I mean, the driving economic force of the world is what's called the neoliberal economic paradigm. And of course, it is a very self-centered form of capitalism. And I'm certainly not against capitalism. Don't get it. I'm in a business school. Can't be against capitalism. But And that's one reason I got into sustainability again, because it makes profits paramount above everything else. And that drives the global 100, that drives the world. And so then, if profits are the most important, well, then that creates exploitation, consciously or unconsciously, of many stakeholders that are affected by the organization. That's where the triple bottom line comes from. We maximize people, planet, and profits. So the answer, I don't know, that was a long answer, but the answer is yes. I think that it is now for the various reasons.
Yeah, thanks, Jody, and that brings us indeed, um, us talking about leadership for sustainability. Um, a couple of minutes ago, you were alluding to, a couple of articles, um, and a book is upcoming, right? You have done a lot of work with Ella Eleftheria Eagle, and she has been a guest on this podcast as well. So I just want to remind the listeners that if they did not listen to that particular episode, that they should check that out. It's definitely worthwhile. Um, so yeah, so you wrote a book around the triple bottom line. But I want to ask you about um, spirituality and sustainability. Um, so you were alluding to that relationship between spirituality and sustainability. Maybe my question is, what distinguishes truly sustainable leadership from sustainability as a slogan?
Well, there's a lot of different views of sustainability leadership. Ella and I use the term leadership for sustainability, and our piece that we published in 21 reviewed all that literature. And basically, our work on global leadership for sustainability is what we call it, is grounded in the spiritual leadership model. So if you look at the model of global leadership for sustainability, it's really the spiritual leadership model focused on sustainability. And ultimately, the spiritual aspect, either one, now we call it inner life in the spiritual leadership model or spiritual practice. But in our model of global leadership for sustainability, we call it a global mindset for sustainability. And I need to digress just a little bit and talk about being centered leadership. Wrote a piece in 2009, and Ella and I followed up with 2 or 3 subsequent articles on current, even now, current models of leadership are about having and doing. I am what I do, or I am what I am. And so that's my leadership. That's what drives my leadership. It's about status, it's about myself. Or the elites in the organization. It's about and how we are about ourselves is we maximize profits, only it trickles down below us. And most of the time oftentimes there are obviously exceptions. The employees are just means to an end. And out of that work, we came up with 5 levels of being that represent, and we've used it in the latest piece. If people want to look at it, it's called A Framework for Leader Spiritual and Moral Development, that goes through these different levels. But they have three categories. The first is about, I lead by stuff, and most organizations now lead by vision and values. In other words, we socially construct a reality, and you can see this in our society. We socially construct a reality that pretends uh, to benefit the people or the workers, but actually it's a facade to benefit it's a dream they create, and it's ultimately about satisfying the elites, but it's a con job. And so where that then leads to spiritual leadership or spiritual global leadership for sustainability is hitting this threshold. Organizations can hit this threshold of this is not working. We need to take care of ourselves as well as make money. And that creates the need to go inward and actually look at ourselves first as leaders. And so that's and become more conscious or self-aware. There's conscious capitalism, there's conscious leadership. These are movements that, that are good. And once you enter that place, you really get serious about truly serving your key stakeholders, not just the ones that benefit financially. And so once you move into that realm, then you focus your organization on that, and that's the only level of being where spiritual leadership or global leadership for sustainability can be practiced. And so this global mindset for sustainability takes that, it's grounded in that. But what we came up with, really, Ella came up with, was two ethical principles that drive it. And one is the ethic of moral responsibility. We have a moral responsibility to respond to stakeholders, that we affect, and then an ethic of care that we care for even those stakeholders that we don't affect directly. And so that's what drives global. I know that's a lot, and I'm not sure I made any sense, but this whole idea of that's the spirituality or the spiritual journey is the journey of self-transcendence, the journey of going from one, satisfying my own egoic needs to understand what they are and recognizing that my failures in life or my lack of happiness or satisfaction in life are due to that. And then waking up. This is what waking up means, even in Buddhism or Eckhart Tolle. You wake up to that, and then you're transformed. You're transformed to, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's a lifetime practice to really focus on really caring for our stakeholders. And so that's why, and that's not, and so true sustainability is not possible till that's done. So you've got this thing called greenwashing, where we make all these noises that we're about sustainability, but it's still the same old story.
I and if you allow me to try to give my kind of, you know, short my thoughts. When I asked you, what distinguishes truly sustainable leadership from sustainability as a slogan, um, maybe a similar question is, can organization genuinely balance people, planet, and profit? You are addressing that in, I think, a new upcoming book, Completing the SDG Promise, Leadership to Bridge Competing Worldviews for a Sustainable Future, where, um, you know, two key phrases are important there. And that's the moral responsibility and the ethic of care. So I would like to know a little bit more about the upcoming book, some more details, especially because, if I look at the title, Bridging Competing Worldviews is kind of immediately caught my attention. But before we go there, have you seen examples where organizations were able or are able to genuinely balance people, planet, and profit?
There are some, absolutely. There are some, and we even talked about some in our 2013 book. So there are, which after this book, I'm going to revise it. And so, but there absolutely are, but they're pretty rare. Patagonia is one. Interstate Batteries is one. In the if you look at the founder of Interstate Batteries, which is a big company in the South, it was a woman. But they're not prevalent now. And a lot of that is a function of size. I think you'll find a lot of small businesses where everybody can know everybody, but ultimately it's the leader that sets the tone for the organization. But there's this law of bureaucracy I talk about that's every bit as strong as the law of gravity. And if you look at the Fortune 100 over the last 100 years, you'll see that every 25 years, half of them have dropped out. And we tend to think they last forever. And so organizations ossify. And because of because of the board of directors and the stock market and the pressure for profit, they lose their soul. And so I believe every town would have many, because there are many, many people who are loving, caring leaders and are not in it for themselves, but not very many large organizations that are like that.
Okay. Can we go to the bridging competing worldviews? What do you mean by competing worldviews? And what are the most significant worldview divides that you see today?
Well, you can look in the environmental world,
Mhm.
and especially what's happened in this country and in Europe is you've got climate change and they have a worldview about the climate. Then you've got the people who don't believe that we need to make the kind of sacrifices they're calling for, that we also, because those kind of sacrifices, the movement itself, in satisfying its desires, will create disadvantaged stakeholders by competing with those desires. If we spend, I don't want to get into politics, I'll just leave it like that. So, two different worldviews.
No.
The neoliberal paradigm that drives business is totally incompatible with the climate change. And so they look, and you can look at the political environment. Each side cannot understand the rationality of the other side. It's two different worldviews that operate off different assumptions, and it's so radical that they literally can't talk to each other. So there's a very good example right in front of us every day. And so this book is about, and it identifies in a broader range 4 categories of these worldviews that come from this position. And I could go through those if you want, but and so it's about what has to happen so that these can be coordinated. We call it orchestrating diversity. You've got 4 incompatible worldviews, and in their own worldview, they can't acknowledge the legitimacy of the other worldviews. And so, what do you do with that, and what does it take? And that's what and we use examples. Well, obviously SDGs, so we use sustainability and that worldview conflict. You've got the measurement ones. It's all about targets and carbon emissions and measurement to see if we made change, and that's really dominant. Then there's the meaning worldview. That really what this is about values and the impact we have on people, and recognizing the disadvantages we take, and or the for example, the indigenous aspects, but certainly even small communities. Well, and a great example now is the computer centers that are being built for AI. And there's a lot of resistance in Texas to building these big things because of the impact it has on local communities and the environment. And so that's the meaning. Then there's the social justice or the justice category that says, it could be communism or capitalism, that it creates social inequalities, and the the big organizations on either side are dominating. So we've got structural issues in society that we've got to reform before anything can be made. And then you've got what we call the wholeness category, which is really consciousness, that it's all about relationships. But if you're operating at these lower levels of confidence or consciousness, or the lower levels of being, even the consciousness level is stuck, because it's all about, we see the whole and you don't, but it's still from a self-serving perspective. So the real issue is, and ultimately where we end up in the book, is that the global mindset and the global leadership sustainability is necessary for orchestrated diversity. That you have to go through, and what kind of models, methods, and tools can you use to shepherd this orchestrated diversity? You don't change anybody. You bring up their level of awareness, where first they can recognize the validity of each, and then have move to an element, see the benefit of moving to engaging in, the simplest is mindfulness. Mindfulness programs. There's a lot of mindfulness programs about being in the present, not letting your negative emotions about the past or the fear of the future cloud your current thinking as a leader. So that's the gateway to the level 3. So how can we move folks first to a level of awareness, and then, and this is what I do with the course I teach on, graduate course I teach on leadership formation, create the context for an invitation to move into this journey of transformation. And you can't force anybody to do that, just like you can't force an alcoholic to get sober. They have to hit this wall first before they'll and see that it's not working. So that's always the problem in any of this. So that's the gist really of the book.
No, thank you for explaining that. There's a lot to take in. I would like
Well,
to.
I
I
know,
would
I
like.
know. It's a,
I,
professors. Well, there's an old saying: professors are like gas in a jar; they'll expand to fit their container. And
I,
so,
I would like to maybe touch upon the Sustainable Development Goals, because that's where you started, right? And
well, yeah, it's why aren't they working?
yeah, and well, I know that you're familiar with that, but you know this this growing group of people that have developed the inner development goals. They say that the SDGs, if you want to reach those 17 goals, they don't require only system change or processes, but they also require inner development, and that's why the inner development goals were established. Yeah, but what are your thoughts about it? Does that resonate with you?
Well, that was the piece that Mauricio Campos and Ella and I did in the book that Ella edited on the inner development goals. The uh, let's see what the let me see what I can't remember the title of it. I can tell you just a second. It's Global Leadership for Sustainability and Inner Development Goals, and integrated. This is obviously an integrated framework and roadmap to enhance leader and leadership development. That's what academics do. That's how we title articles. But basically, what we did was show that absolutely it's important, because you can directly, and we do it in the paper, we can directly show that each of those 5 areas relate to, or can be identified with, each of the components of the Global Leadership for Sustainability model. So what they've done is drill down into detail about what that might look like. So they're very compatible with our work on global leadership for sustainability. And so, yes, there is no sustainability goals without inner development goals, or we don't call them goals, but without inner development or inner life practice, or in our model, creating or committing to those ethical principles that underlie the global mindset for sustainability. That is the inner development goal piece of one of those 5.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the answer is very compatible. In fact, it substantiates our work.
Okay, great. Jody, I mean, these conversations always go fast. I still have a couple of questions that I would like to ask you. So maybe we can go a little bit more in the rapid fire type of state.
Okay, I'll do my best.
I know it might be difficult for professors, right? But I'm going to push you here, Jody.
Well, I'll try to be a little more succinct then.
Okay. The first question is, what worries you most right now?
Worries me?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm on the beam, nothing worries me. That's part of the inner development. Nothing worries me. I mean, if you want to ask me what are the greatest challenges today, I would say it's exactly that. We're all operating at a lower level of being, or a lower level of awareness, that are grounded in earthly rewards and treasures. And that is not where true happiness lies. And so it's not a worry, but if you had to say what's the one thing, is we need to wake up. But our society is so structured now, especially with the tight connection with social media and everything that goes with it, it's got us in a trance.
Okay. Where do you see signs of progress that others may be overlooking?
Where do I see signs of progress? I think I see signs of progress in Gen Z.
Okay.
It's like Einstein. You can't solve a problem with the people that created it. My generation for sure is not going to solve it. And I don't think the Gen Zs or the millennials are going to solve it either. I think we've got to grow our way out of it. But what we can do, those of us that are committed to this, is we can give them model, methods, tools, contexts. And that's part of the problem too. It's not the sustainability goals in these worldviews are not just organizations. They transcend generations, because each generation has its own concern about, say, sustainability. And the younger generations are really, really committed to issues of climate and issues of environmental sustainability. And so I think it's I guess where the hope lies always is in the young.
Okay. Yeah. What I hope that this podcast is contributing to is that I'm able to connect people, right? We are connected, I connect you with the listeners, and because connection is the first necessity for, a conversation, for dialogue, which I think is
Absolutely.
important. So I'm going to connect you with a previous guest of the podcast, and she has a question for you.
What is the most effective thing that civil society should focus on? What should we really be investing on? Is that one issue that is more important than others, and that will bring us change more than others?
Waking up, recognizing the futility of our society, and the first step would be develop a mindful practice to be in the present, because the ego forces us to be in the ego cannot exist in the present. I recommend Eckhart Tolle for that, if people really want to kind of I use practicing the power of now in my leadership formation class, and the students eat it up. Of course, they're graduate students. So I would say the first thing is become mindful, begin to learn to live in the present, and you'll start seeing, one of the terms is, our stuff will start to surface. And if we're not too fearful of looking at it, these these spiritual practices, and there are many others, we will evacuate these. It's an evacuation.
Yeah.
And so then we can begin to transcend our ego or move beyond our own psychic prisons that society puts us in. So that's what I tell all of first thing to do is wake up, be present, because you're asleep. If you're driven by your past or driven by your future, you're asleep. You're in a trance because it doesn't exist.
Your question for the next guest.
Well, I think I would ask them exactly what I just basically said. Where are you in your work in terms of recognizing the implications of, I wouldn't put it this way, of not being awake or not being present. We might have to have because so much of what people are doing is good work, but they're not aware of their own impact on it and their own biases and their own personality and the true motivations for why they're doing it.
If I ask you to come up with a piece of music or a song that represents for a big part who you are, which song or piece of music would it be and why?
And I've never been a playlist person. I mean, early on, I'm from Texas, Texas two-step and, urban cowboy, all of that years ago, but not so much listen to country music anymore. I listen to Sirius XM Chill. It's a channel on it, and it's got a vibe to it in a way, and it's a smooth blend of kind of down tempo, deep music that kind of resets energy. And I kind of looked up a couple folks that did song has that have songs that would represent that. And you've got uh, Nora and Pure, she's got a song "Come With Me." You got Cascade is 4 a.m. and Kygo's got a song called "Stole the Show."
The
And
last one, sorry, the last one stole the show.
Kygo, Kygo, Stole the Show. It's music that it's laid back. It kind of, you can use it for reflecting. It's uplifting. It creates space. You can, I can be creative. Contemplation can create a sense of peace. So that's kind of, I don't know if that's who I am. Probably rarely, but that's certainly
You're aiming for it.
I may not practice, but I sure preach it. I mean, that's I guess I could say that. So I have glimpses of it. Nobody lives there all the time, but and so it's the background for clearing my head and staying focused and winding down, and so it's a context.
Okay. I will try to find him on some of the, at least one of those songs on Spotify. I prepared a Spotify playlist that has all the songs that have been picked by my guests.
Oh,
so
wow,
it's
that would
really,
be remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice list. Yeah, as I said, Jody, I mean, these conversations always go fast. Before I thank you though, is there any question that I did not ask you today that I should have asked you?
Well, I think the one question I wish you'd asked me was really something I can address is the course I teach on leadership formation, and asking me more about what does that look like, and because that's really where my passion lies now, and it's at the center of all my work, our work, certainly Ellen and I's work, um, and how that applies to business and sustainability. It's really where create that invitation for people to walk into this world
Yeah.
of transformation, world of love. Really, I mean,
Am I
ultimately, that's what it's all about.
yeah. Am I correct in assuming that if the listeners would read at least one of your books, that they will get a flavor of, you know, attending a course would be or not?
Well, I wrote those books 13 years ago,
But the
and
one is upcoming, right? A new book
the
is
one is
yeah.
upcoming. I
Yeah.
think they would get a flavor, yeah. And
Yeah.
that's our challenge. Is we've got most of a rough draft together. We've got enough to put a proposal together. Now we're going to start, communicating with publishers, and our attempt is to make this a compelling read, where they can put themselves into these worldviews and really relate on a personal level, because I think once you sort of raise it to that level of comprehension, everybody has experience with it. So that's our hope that we can do. I would say the other books are academic. They're pretty thick.
Hmm.
So I'm not so sure.
Okay.
My students, my graduate students resonate with it, but I have good feedback on that from them.
To go back to the upcoming book, Jody, is okay. If we have a publisher listening, why would they, publish your book?
Why would publishers publish it?
Yeah, no, let us assume there is a publisher listening now to us.
Oh,
And so, let's try to convince the publisher to publish your book. Why? Why
well,
now?
ultimately, I think it's in the title. If you're committed to the SDGs, not so much the SDGs, but what they represent. If you're committed to that, and we can make it a compelling read, it's a must read, because it's a real important piece of bringing the world together, if done rightly, to truly move beyond selfish gratification of financial need or any other need, or the trappings that go with that, to truly care about the disenfranchised in the planet, and to be more loving, to be more caring, to be more other centered. So it's a issue today. It's an issue that of world significance. We focused on those that are at least familiar with the SDGs. That leaves out a whole lot of other people, but we have to start somewhere. Now, my work has been basically universal, but like it's as are the in that it would apply to anybody, because we don't escape organizations. A family is an organization. It's part of our ethos. It's what we swim in. And so right now we're gasping for air and don't know it.
Jo-
Most of us don't know.
Jody, I would like to thank you for today's conversation, for your willingness to talk with me today, for everything you do, for who you are. For the listeners and the publishers out there, completing the SDG Promise, leadership to bridge competing worldviews for a sustainable future. So if you get a proposal about, publishing that book, please do so. The world needs it. Thank you so much, Jody,
Thank
and
you.
all the
Thank
best.
you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Walk, Talk, Listen. Please check us out on 100mile.org or follow us on Facebook or Instagram.